She's all business all the time. Every freaking night and every freaking day, welcome to the Sci-Fi Side under the Believe Podcast Network. It is indeed a podcast about Black science fiction, Black fantasy, and staying on the same page as a family. We're a family. Today for episode 102, we'll be discussing fangirling, fanboying, fan-they-ing, pregnancy horror, moving, and the novella Flowers for the Sea by Zin E. Rocklyn. But before we do that, I want to shout out to these amazing people called patrons, aka the Country Club. These are the people who said, Amber, Ben, and Wild Lynn, I love what y'all are doing, and I would like to give $1, $2, $5 a month to support you in your creative endeavors. Some of those people are as follows: Jamie Holmes, Marissa Gordon, Elena Rodney, Sarah, Shantae Kendall, Charlotte Bueling, Joy, Jade Notice, Katina M. Jude, Jessica Lejeune, Cook, Gael Carpio, Mia Lane, and Kirsten. We will be shouting out those patrons every single month. We appreciate y'all. Also, patrons and Sci-Fi Side podcast listeners, you know how it went down in our bedroom because they saw a really nice video that shared what, Ben?
It shared not what you are
not
leading
a sex
us
tape. Not a sex
to
tape.
believe.
Sorry, I'm so sorry.
Wow. It's
OnlyFans.
Patreon,
OnlyFans coming
not
soon.
OnlyFans. Yeah. Oh yeah. Are we doing that announcement now for our OnlyFans? So
Come on, Ben, with the joke.
with that joke. No, but I'm serious. OnlyFans makes some money. They really do.
Listen.
And anybody can do it. It's like YouTube.
I don't think anybody can do it. I think you need to be like constantly entertaining, making people feel like one-on-one.
There's no gatekeeping of the publishing.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yes, that would be correct. But it's kind of like, it's probably like algorithm wise, like the interface chooses what goes viral or not, probably, right? Or what
sort
pops
of,
up on your feed.
Maybe.
But anyway,
as
we
you
are
can
not
tell,
on
we are
OnlyFans.
very active on OnlyFans. So this is the podcast where you learn about OnlyFans. If you thought we were going to discuss science fiction and fantasy, you are wrong. Instead, we are talking about porn for beginners. No. So Amber and I broke a bed. The first time ever that I broke a bed. I don't know about you. Have you broken a bed before?
I've broken a bed before, but I'll be honest. The first time I've broken a bed, I think it was like pure sex acrobatics. Whereas this time it was a little bit of sex and maybe weight gain. Whereas the first time I knew it was not weight gain because it was like college. So it's like full, it's not like king size beds. It's like a full or a twin. It's like, of course I broke that.
Yeah, no, this was a king size bed with a nice Wayfair. Yeah, you should fear Wayfair. It's more like Wayfair because
I knew
we
we
were
should have got that
terrified.
California King.
California King, the California
We should have
King
been got
bed.
that California King bag. Instead, our big asses down broke the king size.
Anyway,
bed.
Amber made a funny video about it. I don't want to discuss too much because then people will be like, well, then why do I need to join the Patreon if you're just going to rehash what happens on there,
Because we're the shit and you support us. It's
yeah,
fine.
obviously.
Nobody's going to say that. In our minds, we think people are, but or maybe they say it in their head. I don't know. But nobody says that to me.
It's like that thing you think people are looking at you or talking about you. Well, influencers have that to like level 1 billion.
Yeah, I'm always like, oh my God, what are people going to say if the boxes I packed for this move aren't like perfectly neat? And they're going to say nothing.
Or I'm like, what are people going to say if I call my beautiful black woman of a wife a cunt,
Oh, yeah, that even that went over pretty well, which is maybe just telling of how much society hates women. It doesn't matter. But no, I think we're always in our head and in reality, like nobody's checking for us. Speaking of checking things out, Ben, our basement flooded, our storage unit. How are you? You saw it. I didn't. I'm not going down there because I don't want to, live the Titanic in real time.
Well, it's just one of those things that you have to clean up right when it happens. It's just one of those things living in a city. There is rain. Chicago had a shit ton of rain. There are sirens that are,
it's one
picking
of those
up
things.
people who tripped and fell crossing over a crosswalk, or I don't know what they're being picked up for. Maybe they fell off their bike riding on the lakeshore without a helmet. Maybe they were pushed. So I cleaned it up. I took care of it. And I realized, though, that this whole experience really taught me that when I give you bad news, if I create an orchestration, an accompaniment to bad news.
I'm sorry. You be tripping over the words.
I don't know how to fucking talk.
I know. It's actually kind of cute.
So last week I said
Accompaniment.
corporeal, and I meant corporeal. I had to look it up and have
Are you
Google
sure
talk. It's corporeal.
Or it's not corporal?
No.
Like corporal punishment?
No.
Okay.
It's corporeal. I had Google say it back to me. So it's one of those things, and I've said this before, is that homeschoolers really struggle with speaking because we spent most of the time, like you said, in our heads. So anyway.
I mean, but you're super smart. It doesn't mean you're any less smart or any less intelligent.
I'm not. And I know that.
I love, that's it for me. We have been.
Oh, wait. But about yes. I lost track. So I realized that whining, dining you, and stuffing your face with delicious food and then giving you bad news is the way to ever talk about anything. Because really, I usually just try to talk to you about things the way that you talk to me about things. For example, I'll be reading and you'll have an idea or something that frustrates you, and I'll hear in the other room, and then stomping into the room, say, I need to talk to you about this thing. You need to do this. And it immediately happens. You immediately feel it, and then you confront me. Where when I try to do that, it's a little bit more difficult for you to handle it just because you are more of a perfectionist, where I'm more apathetic, so I can sort of deal with that. Where if I approach you in that way, it doesn't go over as well. But I actually respond better when you're firm and clear and you're marching. So but now bad news or things that I need to talk to you about, I just got to give you shots of tequila or mezcal, and then you are all ears.
Okay, so let's back up. I will stomp my feet and clap my hands and do the whole charade and bit when it's you who is the person that has done the thing. Like, it'll just be something as simple like, and Ben, I love you, but you do not leave things where they were left. So my day to day is, something things that we share. So Ben always knows if I walk the dog, I leave the dog leash in our one specific place. If Ben walks the dog, ain't no telling where the leash is going to be. The cap of the toothpaste is always going to be in the other side of the. I let you talk.
I know.
Other
I was
side
just
going to
say that the dog leash could have been used as toilet paper. I don't know. Like,
so when
it ends up in weird places.
So when I'm doing that real time, I'm just kind of like, where is the thing that I left it? It's like Ben asked to borrow my AirPods so they could be in the car in a pocket that was washed in the laundry. He would never just take something and put it exactly back where he got it from. So as you can imagine, it is super frustrating to walk around the house, not only cleaning up after me and Wild and Ben and Gucci, but that things are not where I left them and where our designated spot for them is. But when I have bad news to share that you've done had nothing to do with, like, the flooding had nothing to do with me. Yeah, you can butter me up.
Okay, so.
But when I've done something and you're mad, you stomp too.
Sure, but I'm talking about successive communication styles.
Successive?
Success.
Full.
Yeah, or it's just success in general.
Okay.
So you can be successful by throwing a little bit of a fit, and I'll listen to you. Where if I throw a fit, the walls are just, we're talking about Israel-Palestine shit, like, or Berlin.
What's happening in Israel-Palestine.
Yeah, well, walls, right? But people build walls so quickly. They really do.
I just wish you could just walk through. We need to do like Freaky Friday. Like, something fantastical needs to happen in this home. Because I wish you could just wake up and walk through a world where everything you put in a certain place has been moved. Except for things I obviously like my clothes are going to be where they are.
That actually sounds like a good short story where I die and then my ghost comes back and just moves things around just to fuck with you. But that's actually how I know he's haunting me.
Like,
No.
is he fucking with me right now?
Well,
or does he
again-
really just like to leave things everywhere?
Again, we're missing the issue. The issue
What's
is
the issue?
is that your method of receiving communication can never involve me stomping or throwing a fit.
If you want it to be effective now.
Right. Where if you throw a fit and you're upset and you stomp and you might say a little jab here and there, I'll still listen to you. I'm that bitch. Like, I just
Yes, you're the bitch leaving things everywhere. It's like some sort of like mind fuck Hansel and Gretel living in this house. And even, when we stay with my parents, they're like, we cannot find the things that he put that, like, if he borrowed a spatula, it could be back in the drawer or it could be in the garbage outside. It's
or
just
in
like,
the bathroom. I spent a lot of time reading in the bathroom.
What is that, Ben? Tell the listeners. It's
I haven't
toothpaste.
figured
Just
it
put
out.
the cap back on it.
You did tell me to do that yesterday, and I went and did it.
You
And
did. I was like, I refuse to go to that bathroom unless you did. So
You also refused to get angry recently. You've sort of learned to regulate your emotions.
because
and
you
just,
are my best friend, and I
Yeah,
do
you
love
don't want
you.
to be mad at your best friend.
And I love creating content with my best friend.
You taught me a new
He's
term.
just a slob.
You taught me a new term recently that has to do with this.
Okay. What was it?
I forgot it, but you taught me it.
So I don't know what you're talking about.
The watermelon. Basically, I made a video of me cutting up watermelon very poorly or just
I
incorrectly.
made a video, and it was so bad.
Yes. And so Amber calls that intentional or
weaponized
weaponized
incompetence.
incompetence. I found it. I found the phrase weaponized incompetence.
Yeah.
I never heard that before.
Well,
This
I
idea
don't
of
know
doing
if that-
something terribly, right? Let me define it. This idea of doing something terribly so that someone won't ask you to do it, so you've weaponized your inability.
Yeah. Do you think you do that sometimes?
I don't think I do that.
Maybe just.
I
like
think I'm
once or
just
twice.
terrible at certain things.
You're like, I'm not strategizing how terrible
Yes,
I am. I'm just terrible.
I'm not. You
Oh,
have to
that's-
be a certain level of like dickery. You have to be a true fucking piece of shit to weaponize your inability. And pure, like, that's next level of laziness. I'm not lazy. I'm just apathetic in certain ways, and I don't care about certain levels of cleanliness. Like, I have certain levels of cleanliness, but yours is higher, or standards. I have very different standards.
So please sound off, y'all. Is it a high expectation for me to expect the cap of the toothpaste to be put back on? That's to the moon, I guess. But anyway, we've been moving, which here's the thing. This is why I'm sure people are like, Amber, you're so gorgeous. You're so talented. Why would you put up with this in a partner? And to that I say, Ben is like that player on the bench that really steps up when it's game time.
Clutch.
He's
clutch.
clutch. So it's like, yeah, he might have like fucked around in practice or whatever. But when there's something big happening, like a move, you have really, every day you're like, I'm going to get these boxes. I'm packing things up. I'm calling these companies. Like, so it's like, I can't get rid of clutch but like in the day-to-day shit, he's pissing me off. But like, you show up where it counts.
Yeah.
So it's like,
And in the bedroom, breaking beds.
sure. Anyway, if you are still
Podcast
listening to this,
review.
you must really love this show. And we want always for you to send us your Apple Podcast reviews. Ben, would you like to read it or would you like me to read it?
You read it because you're the bomb.
Okay, this one is from Mr. T.J. Jizzle. I think that's more appropriate. Remember, if you make an Apple Podcast rating, we will read that rating on the show. Good, bad, ugly. We're going to read it. So this one's from Mr. T. Jizzle. A bomb podcast. I just wanted to start off by saying y'all are so dope. Love the pod. I'd also love to hear y'all's opinions on two works I recently stumbled on. Excellence, which is a comic by Brandon Thomas. It's kind of like an Afro-futuristic family and political drama with magical and wizarding world flair. And Black No More, a satirical novel turned musical by George Schuyler, set during the Great Depression about a machine that turns black people white. Quite a plot device. Anyway, keep up the great work and congrats on the new baby. So I'm going to start by saying, have you read either of these?
I've heard of Brandon Thomas, but I haven't read any of them. Brandon Thomas is a pretty well-known name in the comic book game.
Yeah,
sure.
I feel like even I have heard of Brandon Thomas, so that's saying something. So, Ben, we are going to, Mr. T Jizzle, we're going to add these two to our reading list because, as y'all know, that list is so long. I'm so grateful that we have chosen a niche podcast to do, but we have endless content and timeless content. Like you can kind of, we're moving now, but you can kind of listen to this podcast anytime. It's not like pop culture or anything. Sometimes it is, but so we will be definitely adding Excellence and Black No More to the list. I say so. We will be just to give y'all an update while we're packing things up and having to put things in boxes. We're gonna have sort of a slump on books just for like a couple of weeks because they're physically packed up and we cannot accumulate more stuff. But we're gonna be doing some movies and shows, right, Ben? And then we're gonna pick back up on books probably in like a month or so. But we did read Flowers for the Sea, right, babe?
We did, and the whole part of Flowers of the Sea, the way this came about is I went to Worldcon and I saw a panel with some incredible people. It was Tananarive Due and Zin E, Rocklyn, who wrote this book, was on the panel. And Zin E, Rocklyn was hilarious. They're very funny.
Oh, yeah.
They just had really great energy. Listened to the panel. Zin E, Rocklyn's amazing. And I went and I just love their energy. So I went, read one of their short stories, and I was like, oh, now I need to like buy this amazing novella. So I was walking around the bookstore looking for books, and I saw Zin E, Rocklyn. So I went over to them. I was like, oh my gosh, you're really funny. I read some of your stuff. I can't wait to cover this novella. And then they were like, wait, I know who you are. You're Ben. And so they actually knew Amber and me.
That's what I do, baby. I make my way.
And so we were just like
downtown.
both. I think authors in my mind, they sort of stand up above everybody else. Their level of energy and their kindness and work ethic, maybe not kindness, not all authors are kind, but their level of work ethic and the fact of writing is so difficult. So I was just surprised that they knew me and were just as excited to talk to me as I was to them. And we ended up like sitting down talking for like 2 hours because I bought their novella that day, read it over the con weekend, and then we discussed it. We really hit it off. And then later they stayed for another 2 days. So I was like, hey, come to this bar and hang out with Amber and I. And then we ended up just talking and hang out again for like a bunch of hours and drinking. And it was really great. So that's where this book comes from, of like fanning. But when I was describing this to you, you came up with a new term.
So as Ben just said, he goes up to this person and starts fanning because they're an author, and then they start fanning him because he's on TikTok. So I was like, oh, y'all were Fan69ing.
Which is so funny to me.
I know.
And there's a lot of that happens at Worldcon, where whenever like two people are a fan of each other's works and they never meet each other and they get really excited about meeting each other, that's called Fan69ing.
Yeah, I'm sure I'm not the first person to say this term.
It is.
Have you found it somewhere else? Maybe I should trademark it.
It's a more inclusive term, right? Because fanboying, fangirling is not gender neutral, but also Fan69ing is a sexual term, so it sort of isolates asexual folk.
Yeah.
So language is just not inclusive by default.
Yeah.
But Fan69ing is great.
Upward inflection. Yeah. Fan69ing is great. I think 69ing can be used for more than just oral pleasure.
Right.
Because
it's a metaphor.
we'll sit on the couch and both massage each other's feet. And I'll be like, Ben, I'm only going to do this if we 69 the situation.
Yeah.
So I think 69 is just a great term to be like, we're both putting in work. Maybe one person more than another, but I'm kidding.
Weren't you applying? You started applying it to all different. You're like, oh, we were just 69ing at work recently.
Yeah. It's like I thought we were 69, but we're actually not. It's just me down here. It's a good word.
It tickles me because
I could tell.
I think of like the very sexual image of 69ing, and then you applying that to
just being
like
excited to see someone else.
Like office space or something.
It's a different form of excitement for sure.
All right, so we read this book, Flowers for the Sea, And it follows the story of Araxi, who's part of a collection of survivors who remain after an apocalyptic event has forced everyone to live on the sea. So it has that cli-fi element. And then basically all the women cannot have babies, and all the babies are dying or being born as stillborns. But Araxi is actually able to have a baby. And half the book is about her pregnancy and about her going into labor. The labor here is very long. And in the middle...
Yes. Yes.
And in the middle of this, there are these monsters called razor fangs flying around and ripping people's arms off. And she is trying to deal with the fact that all her family, her immediate family, has been murdered because there's this indication that her family has this special relationship with the sea. Her grandma was, I think, being accused of being a sea witch or something along the line. And so she has to live with these people who sort of treat her like shit, but also she's the last hope because she can actually have a baby. So that's...
very Handmaid's Tale, but also, as I read it, I was like, oh, this is like if Ursula the Sea Witch had an origin story or some shit.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, because the baby ends up coming out with like tentacles and stuff.
And it can fully talk once it's born.
Creepy as shit. Super.
I was a fan of that. I was like, I kind of wish the human baby did this, because the whole like, what do you want? Is it a back scratch? Is it a bottle? Are you tired? That's hard.
Also, being on a boat just generally sucks, and I feel like this book captures that. I remember when I was on a sailboat with my uncle, and I just was vomiting the whole time. It was awful. We romanticize like boat life. It's not something
I don't hate
that
a boat.
want. Oh, I hate.
I know you hate like cruises and stuff.
God, just
like, well, not that we've ever been on a cruise together, but anytime I'm like, oh my God, we should just go on a cruise where everything is. You're like, no.
There's one that I did suggest to you. It's called Joko, and it's basically a convention on a cruise. So I would go to that one, but
despite being seasick.
Yeah, but I mean, imagine being pregnant on a boat. You're sort of like walking, and your feet.
Oh, that's
are
a
unsure.
hellhole. I'm sure they probably have a policy where you can't be pregnant and get on a boat at a certain point.
Like
if you go into labor, they might not have the crew for it and stuff. You know?
Don't they have doctors, like actual doctors, on cruises, because they're like small cities?
Maybe they probably have like an EMT team, but they might not have like a midwife and all the fixings.
Maybe.
I want to say this, Zen, and I told you this in person, but if you're listening, I cannot thank you enough for writing a novella where the character that was pregnant is pregnant for well over half of the novella and is in active labor for well over half the novella, because that is actually how long it feels. I one day, I've tell Ben this all the time, if I were to write a TV show, I would have the person get pregnant, like whoever the actor is that's pregnant, they would begin their pregnancy in season 1 and not give birth to season 5, because that is how long it feels. It's like this, you're talking about like over a year when you count everything from, I mean, and maybe more if you're trying for a really long time or you have miscarriages or whatever, but it is a very long process of holding and carrying a child and then giving birth to that child, especially near the end. Like minutes just feel like years. So I'm so grateful that this book did not begin with someone pregnant and then in chapter 2 they've had the baby. Like the labor was most of the book, and I cannot thank Zen enough. And I could tell that Zen had talked to Zen does not have kids, but I could tell that they talked to like many of their friends about like how long and grueling this is. Like you could just tell with the pages of the book. Can I show people the book as well for the people watching on YouTube?
Yeah, as Amber's showing that, Amber, do you remember how bad we smelled, like in the middle of your labor, after your labor? Talk about the stench. Like, yeah.
You think you smelled? I
smelled.
I couldn't smell anything outside of my bubble of funk and acridity, as I learned from Zen's book.
Acrid, and that's they talk about the smell. Araxi talks about its first person narration, the smell of being pregnant, and just
I mean, I'm pretty certain we made a TikTok video about it once where you were like massaging my back and you got a whiff of my scent. Or even, oh my gosh, y'all, during my labor, which, was a grueling 56 hours, during my labor, like I would say maybe 50 hours in, my mom was like, I'm sorry, I got to wipe you down. And like, as I'm pushing, my mom like just gets a hand towel and just starts wiping every crevice of my body because she's like, it smells so bad in here. But like, of course, near the end of pregnancy, you can't even, this is graphic, but you can't even give yourself a clean wipe.
Yeah. You can't reach over.
Yeah, you physically cannot twist around.
That bidet really came in handy.
Yeah, the bidet came in handy, but still, you're just like, I can't even really wash myself because I haven't seen my vagina in months.
Well, to that point, we did have sex pretty up to it, and actually, our midwife said we should have sex during labor. And in this book,
we're not just going to talk about us boning this whole show. That's relevant to the story.
Yes, in this book, she goes and has sex while she is in early labor.
Yes.
And Zen was telling us that a bunch of like white women had messaged her really upset that Zen,
like a woman would never have sex during labor. I was like, yeah, I mean, it's a really intimate, like instinct, like primal time. Like, of course people have sex during labor. I wasn't. That was not my story. But I mean, you do stuff early labor. You might dance around a little bit, walk around. I don't know. Zen really did their research with how labor doesn't have to look and feel one way, even though this is like a sea creature. Obviously, there were so many parallels to this book. I folded. I know what I'm gonna say later in the book that I remembered.
Well, there are parts of this because her baby has like tentacles and like latches onto her neck and like sort of stuns her, and it made me think of the times when you first started nursing and like that first latching and learning how to latch and just
that was not fun.
Pain and suffering, and that's sort of captured in here as well. What's your question? My question is like, why do people just think nursing is so important, and if you don't nurse, you're a bad mom? Because nursing is just the worst.
It is. It does kind of suck. I actually recently weaned off of breastfeeding because it was just a lot, like from the pump to traveling everywhere to like it not having all the fats that it needed. But I think people like to mom shame and parent shame. If I'm being honest, like people who breastfeed get criticism, people who nurse, who pump, who formula, like everybody's getting it from all ends. So I think everybody just has this like idea of like what it's like to be the perfect parent. But I definitely do think some of the more like natural crunchy granola circles that we obviously run in because of the yoga and because of the birth center, they're all about like exclusively breast pumping. But I think every mom needs to do, or every parent needs to do what works for them. It's just like, it's very, very hard to just exclusively pump. It was for me. We did it for 4 months, but I'm out of there, baby.
Well, there's a book called Crib Sheet that looks at the data. The data behind it is strong to suggest that there is really no big long-term difference between breastfeeding and using formula, essentially. The things that really stand out has to do with reading and what other comforts you're providing to your child. But the level of like, you need to breastfeed. But this book captures like when you breastfeed and have that intimacy with the baby, like that baby is sort of like sucking from you. And at one point describes the baby as a parasite in the book.
Absolutely.
Because it's stealing all your... So reading this, did you miss the glow of being pregnant?
No, not at all. I think this book perfectly captures... Obviously, if you have not carried a child, you will still enjoy this book. But this book really, this novella perfectly captured sort of the underbelly of pregnancy. I mean, I know that like if you talk to the average person who's been pregnant...
Pun intended, the underbelly.
The unintended underbelly of just how grueling pregnancy and labor can be, because there was not an ounce of joy in this motherhood story. And I actually really appreciated that, because I had this problem when Wild was first born. It's like, I love this child, obviously, but this child is a symbol and reminder of the day that I was in the greatest pain of my life. And it just takes a long time to reconcile that, because every time you look at them, you just kind of like touch your stomach a little bit, because you're like, wow, that I did that. Like, you feel like a boss, but they rip you apart, and it hurts, and it's very traumatic. Like, and my doula told us that early, so we were definitely prepared mentally, but like, birth is traumatic. It is inherently traumatic. And I remember even carrying Wild, I was like, oh my gosh, like I just tried to talk intimately with my grandmother about, like, you did this 6 times, and in some cases, like, fully, against your will. Not that it wasn't consensual, but just like back then they just didn't have birth control and things like that, and women weren't allowed to go to work. And so a lot of ways I'm like, wow, but there was a good portion of your adulthood where you were just kind of like a prisoner in your own body. And she's like, yeah. And
you had to do it again.
And you had to do it again and again and again. And I'm floored. I mean, obviously we could have a whole debate about how forced motherhood is inhumane, and like, obviously we could go on and on about laws being overturned and stuff like that, but we all know that. I just think, I don't know. Well, I think this book did a really great job just capturing all of that gunk that is motherhood.
Obviously, we don't all know that. You say we all know that, but obviously we don't all. I think
if you listen to our show, you know about Roe versus Wade being overturned.
I guess we as in humans.
That. Yeah.
I'm saying humans. Not all humans know the cost, because when I asked, like, when I was like, okay, where did this idea come to write this book? And they're like, well, I was just tired of hearing everyone saying the glow. Don't you like love the glow of pregnancy and all that? I'm like, Zen was like, no, I wanted to write something that dealt with the trauma, the pain. And I think a lot of people just associate like pregnancy as just this beautiful, wonderful thing for everybody. For everyone, like, pregnancy is a good thing. Everyone should have kids. Everyone should do it. It's one of the most incredible things. There's a really famous book called Tuesdays with Morrie, and there's a line in there where the main character, Morrie, says, there's nothing like having kids. There's no substitute to having kids. It's the most important thing you can do. And this book sort of challenges that head on. So there is a crying baby scene, and when the baby cries, it's so loud that people's ears start bleeding. And I feel like it just perfectly captures that feeling when you're trying to sleep or you're trying to record a podcast and you hear a baby cry and you're just like, fuck, my ears are bleeding. Like, this book isn't so important, especially it's important now. Like, people who listen to our show obviously probably align with us on our political beliefs, but I would say buy this for someone who's like, abortion is, like, is it really the right thing? And this book will be like, yes, some things should be aborted.
I want to also lead with look at her wiggling in that. We're looking at the baby monitor, and she is just she just lost the fight. Okay. I want to say that the book it forces you to be mindful as you read this book. This is not I don't know. This is not a once upon a time kind of book. Like, you have to read this book very carefully to understand some things happening. I remember saying that to Ben when I first started it, and I love this book. I just want to say it's so beautifully written stylistically, but it I don't know. There's a level of rigor with this book that I was like, okay, let me like really pay attention, or let me reread a couple paragraphs here. Or I would ask Ben. I was like, I think there's a lot of room for interpretation on a couple of the scenes for things, right, babe?
Yeah, so there are dream sequences, and then there's flashbacks, and so you do have to, it requires your attention. It's not a linear, again, I can't talk. How do you say that?
Linear.
Thank you.
It's not or there are some parts, not to spoil all of it, but there are some parts where you're like, wait, so whose baby is this? Or are they polyamorous? Or was this
There is some polyamory going on.
So there are some things, and I would more so say, like, it's out of the box in some of that way. I don't know if out of the box is good, but it's like you have to think a little bit. You have to unthink what you assume of like, oh, a mom and a woman get pregnant and this is the da-da-da. There's a lot at play here, but yes, when it came to the screaming of the child, all of that was very clear. And I would just want to read, because I remember this on page 89. This is, so the child has been born, and this is kind of describing the child's cry. It is, in fact, to hand the child to me, but the disturbance is too much. Those lungs, bigger than anyone can imagine, release a howl so deep, so profound, nearly everyone is brought to their knees. I won't read the rest, but I remember reading that and thinking like, yes, those lungs, that howl, she brings me to my knees. Like when you're just like super exhausted and just like drained of everything you have, and you feel like you've given this precious little needy thing every part of you, and they just still let out this like guttural howl and scream. I was like, Zen gets it. Zen gets me. So I appreciate just those descriptions. I appreciate also that this baby being can talk. And I don't know. I really want to celebrate this book for a second, because we're kind of in the season of, well, I'll say this much. If you are a racist white person, you're having a really bad week.
You are
as far as black people in fantasy right now, because we got Little Mermaid. You're upset about that. We got like the new Game of Thrones. You're upset about black Targaryens. We got the new Lord of the Rings thing. You're upset
Black
about black
hobbits.
elves and black. So add this book, this novella, to the pile of like black sea witches and urchins and aquatic beasts all being black as fuck. Like you're just having a bad week. Like the
Pile this
outrage
up on
I've
the other
seen.
things you should hate.
Add this to the list of like, I hope.
Buy it, read it.
Yeah, and then Queen Lizzie died. So you're fully wrecked this week. Like, I understand, but I'm so happy because the biggest thing coming out of, like, I'm not sure how many things you saw about all of the, I can't believe I'm saying this, Little Mermaid backlash. The biggest things out of this week was like, well, y'all have your own stories, don't you? Just tell those. It's like, we fucking are. Like, Flowers for the Sea is a black sea aquatic creature story. Did you read it? Yeah, fuck you. You didn't. So pick it up and read it. Like, I'm not to give them any more my energy, but I'm so sick of hearing, and I understand that. Like, you know, all the time I'm like, why are they remaking Annie as black? Like, we got our own stories, but I'm gonna play that shit for a while. You bet your ass I'm gonna play her the old school, new school, whatever. Like, so fucking what that there are black elves. Like, I'm so sick of, historically, this doesn't make sense. Historically, a mermaid doesn't make sense. Shut up. Wake up, Six.
Didn't you say
Devil
something
Wears
that
Prada.
people were upset that melanin would not show up under the sea?
I legit saw a comment saying, like, there wouldn't be melanated skin under the sea because there's no sun down there. It's like, this is a fictional fish. You just say you're racist. I actually really appreciate when people are like, honestly, I'm just racist. I just don't like black people in my fantasy. Just leave with that. Like, stop trying to make sense of an aquatic being. So they're really gonna, like, I don't know. This if you are saying like, just make your own stories about fish and fictitious creatures, we did it. Zen is a black author who's a freaking boss, stylistic, and the deep. We've done it.
Yeah.
And a little bit of what did we read by Akweke Meza? Freshwater. Like, they're all over the place. Mm-hmm. And they're going to be made into shows. And guess what? You're gonna find something the fuck to say when those come out. So eat it. Eat it. All right, that's the end of my rant. I'm so sorry, but
no, this is great.
We're gonna see the Black Little Mermaid. And we're probably going to roll our eyes because, yeah, we like cartoons. I like animation. Every animation does not have to be made as a remake. But you bet your ass me and Watt are going to sit up there and be black princesses, bitch.
Yeah.
Fuck you. And sea witches.
And I'll be the
witches.
white servant. I'll be the white jester.
You can be the damn Scuttle the bird. But this is a good...
Who's Scuttle the bird?
The Scuttle the seagull. Scuttle? Ain't that his name?
I don't remember. I
well, you're him. If you know, you know.
I don't think I've seen The Little Mermaid, actually, believe it or not.
Really?
Yeah, I don't think I've seen the original.
You're lying. You're just
I don't
saying
think,
that to
I
look
actually
woke.
don't think I've seen it.
Well, let's watch it tonight.
And now I've definitely not
It's really
seen
good.
it. So I always want to say that, like, the first Little Mermaid I ever saw had the Black Mermaid.
This white teacher that I used to work with at the high school, she said something one day like, I've never even seen a white Cinderella. Brandy was my first Cinderella. I was like, bitch, shut up.
I was thinking
Stop
that.
trying to get
I was
cool
literally
points. You know
that.
that's not true. Like, just say you're racist and let's move on and get out of this god-awful copy machine room.
Don't you just love how certain kinds of people, my people specifically, try to do backflips to not be racist?
Yeah, I'm like, dude, my first Cinderella was a blonde white girl. Like, you don't have to, you are reaching right now by saying that.
So this, to sort of close us out here, I want to read.
Sorry, I was on a rant there.
No, you're fine. So
sorry.
It's so beautiful. It's
it's
sort of like a
beautiful.
fever dream. And there's this, I'm going to read y'all a quick flashback where Araxes is remembering the death of her family. Silence has rendered me stupid as my brother's skin bubbles and pops, as my father morphs into ash. My sister's face melts like loose wax away from wet muscle, and my mother... ... So that's sort of the tone of this. It's very disturbing. There is a trigger warning in the front of the book, so beware of that. But it is gothic horror, gothic, creepy, beautiful language at its finest. And I would say the only sigh is that Zen is now in grad school, and from what I understand, spending a lot of time like doing grad school writing and not writing a whole lot. But I really do believe that this is a start of like a really strong career, and I can't wait to see what they do next.
Oh, Zen, I know you're listening to this, Zen. We love you. We loved this story. Thank you for making Black sea creatures, and I just love any aquatic story, and we do have our own stories, and this is one of them, and it's so powerful and beautiful, and birth near the end just fucking sucks. So thank you for validating that experience that I just recently had. And I know that there was a trigger warning at the beginning of this book, but for me, this wasn't so much triggering as like, yes, thank you. like that was yes, it sucks. Like, someone gets it. And then the minute they like plop out of you, you're like, I know I'm supposed to be feeling something for this thing, but honestly, I'm just fucking relieved.
Yeah.
I want to get off of this table and walk away, but I have to stay here so I won't be handcuffed. And so, Zen, you captured that in 104 pages, and I so much appreciate you. With that being said, oh my God, there goes that howl,
howl.
Scream. With that being said, Ben, why don't you warp up the show?
In conclusion, make sure that you buy the novella Flowers for the Sea. It is a short read by Zin E. Rocklyn. Thanks, y'all, for listening.
Bye, y'all. No, wait. Thanks, Ben. Go get that crying baby. Just put her in the camera so everybody can be like, oh, how cute. Because it ain't cute. Just kidding. Okay. Thank you so much for listening to another episode of the Sci-Fi Sci Podcast. Up next, we will be discussing The Purge.
The first Purge.
Yeah, you didn't. The first Purge, directed by Gerard McMurray. A Black man created the first Purge, and we will be watching that. So go watch that. Pray for us as we pack for boxes. If you've had a baby before, read this book so you're like, yeah, they get it. And we will see y'all next week for the show. Bye, y'all. Don't tell Wild I said any of this because I love her so much.
Hello. Hi, it's Bobby.